Hi, good morning. Thank you once again for taking the time for joining us at Money Talk Viewpoint. I'm Dennis Williams, your host. I'm with CashMap Consulting, where we show you how to use bank products to build wealth, be it for the individual or with organizations of any size. Once again, we have back with us Mr. Charles Dent of Xelantt Profit Strategies. He's been giving us insights over enabling businesses, regardless of size, to be able to move from no growth to sustained, scalable, predictable growth. And it has been giving us some tidbits over the last few months over how to make it simple and doable, measurable, and ultimately having a sense of satisfaction and seeing what's happening. We also have with us this morning Miss Marvi from Chat and Chew, a nonprofit. So here's a new spin that we're going to spend this time this morning talking about is the reality of whether it's a nonprofit, a for-profit, or a virtual family office. The strategies and tactics are the same. And so we want to take time this morning with a real life example in which we'll be able to have a great conversation just around taking the strategies that Charles has presented to us and being able to see how they've been applied effectively in creating mindset change and achieving the desired results that Marvi wanted to see for her organization as far as founder. So, Charles, why don't we first start with you, and maybe I'll ask the question just to kind of come back again to the introduction to Marvi is how did you two connect? And then I'd like you to pass it to Marvi as well for her to talk about her organization and what their focus is.
Well, yeah. So thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it, and thank you, Marvi, for being here. We originally connected through Marvi's husband. He and I worked together at a pharmaceutical company, and we were in the same department. We didn't know that we were working. I was running a project, and he was on the other end of the line a lot of times with his department and my department, and we had never met, but we were coordinating and working together. And then one day we happened to meet up with one another. He said his name, I said my name, and oh, so we actually know each other, but we didn't know we knew each other. And this was actually before Zoom and being able to see each other virtually. And we were in a large corporation. But then we met, and eventually I learned about Chat and Chew, or the concept of Chat and Chew, really. And then I met Marvi. Marvi met my wife, and the rest kind of became history because then we created a relationship. But this concept she had, she continued to push forward. And eventually I asked her if she would like for me to basically be her business advisor and to help her to basically scale Chat and Chew. And that's how we got started.
Fantastic. So Marvi, tell us a little bit more about Chat and Chew. What was your vision?
So my vision was stemmed from my personal experience as a single mother of two, also homeless and a survivor of domestic violence. So when we first started this, it was just inviting a few women to my house and just sharing ideas how we can help each other, how we can network. Initially, that was the idea, was to network, because a lot of the women I know have side business. And so I thought, a great idea it would be to combine both groups of women and just have them network. Well, we soon found out that we all shared the same passion of helping the community. And it was from there that we took that brunch outside of my house, and we started Chat and Chew, and we became a 501c in 2018. So Chat and Chew I said, is based off of my own personal experience as a single mother, a homeless single mother of two, surviving domestic violence. And so our company extends beyond your immediate. What makes us stand out is that the clients that we help them for however number of months or years they need for us to walk outside of them to become independent. And they come back to volunteer with us and to give back to other clients. And so our vision is to cultivate resilient and supportive organization and community where single parents um, affected by domestic violence feel that they have a community of support rather than your one phone call and say, hey, I need this, and that will be the end of that support. So like I said, they come back to volunteer with us, serve with us, and not as strangers, but in the end we become family.
That's awesome. So how did you come up with the term, the name Chat and Chew?
That was out of the bunch when I invited women over to my house. Great things come out when women talk over food and chat over their experience.
Love the name.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Charles, when you're thinking in terms of strategic planning, which, unless you've gone to business school, that frequently is something that perhaps is a bit ambiguous or perhaps even a little bit scary. What are the steps that you use to kind of keep strategic planning simple, on point, measurable, results seen quickly, don't get bogged down in too much detail? Talk to us. What does that look like?
Well, strategic planning, as you know, Dennis, can be very complex because we make it complex. We tend to make it complex.
So you're saying
So
if it's complex, that's a problem?
Probably.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. But as it relates to, and I'll use, Marvy as an example, is one of the things that I think, stepping back is understanding, and you said this at the beginning, it's understanding it doesn't matter whether it's a nonprofit, for-profit, virtual family office, everyone does strategic planning, but the words strategic planning may be a little bit confusing. And, if we apply business school techniques to it, but we simplify it, from the standpoint of if in our discussions, I refer to it as just the business fundamentals, the foundational things that really set a business apart. So, and what that means is that the mission, the vision of a company, of an organization, that's part of the strategic planning because that really sets the foundation. And then what are the objectives of that organization? And do those objectives tie to that mission and vision statement? Or are you just off base? But fundamentally, when you start thinking about your vision, your mission, your objectives, your core deliverables, what's the unique value proposition that you're really trying to ensure that your clients, your customers, your donors, that they fully understand, what you're offering. And being able to tie all of that together is, to me, and to some extent, maybe oversimplification, but it makes it easy because now you have a foundation that you can become more complex in your strategic planning, because strategic planning can go very deep, and it all ties to what the objectives are that you're trying to deliver. And so on the surface, creating those objectives or has to tie back again to your mission and vision, but you can take those objectives as deep as you desire, and then how you achieve those That's the planning part, right? So from step A to step Z, how do you accomplish that objective? And so, and again, you can go as deep and make it as complex as possible, but starting out complex is typically an issue. So need to start out at the basics first.
So when you started working with Marvy, and maybe Marvy, you should be the one to answer this question. As you started hearing this thing about strategic planning, what did you think and what change did you have to make in your thinking?
One of the things else made me realize is that a nonprofit is a business and I have to treat it as a business. There is many similar things that for-profit businesses go through that nonprofits do, such as setting out a mission. Um, stepping back in the beginning, Charles said, well, what's your mission and your vision? And I thought, well, they're the same. He said, no, they're not. So he helped us clarify our mission and vision, which helped us refine and ensure that we are on target with what we wanted to do with our ministry, with our nonprofit. So the first thing Charles did for us was change my mindset from, oh, it's a nonprofit, we have to, treat it as a nonprofit, rather than it's a business and money, there has to be money coming in as there are money going out. So so that was pivotal for me.
So tell us, what's your mission, and what became your vision?
Well, our mission is to help single parents reclaim their stability, and our vision is to help single parents affected by abuse to cycle of poverty. Because in my experience, when you experience that type of trauma, you carry a lot of things with you that you think you cannot do or unable to do because of something somebody did to you. So our mission is to empower them, let them know that it is possible to move from poverty. You don't have to stay there. And I know firsthand that it is difficult. And so we walk through that. So part of our mission is to have life coaches. Part of our mission is to help them realize their value, their worth. And so our vision is to have them in a transitional housing to where they can just breathe and take in what has happened to them. And then when they're ready to move forward, we walk alongside of them and help them through the steps of what it looks like in moving forward, whether it's financial classes, whether it's therapy, whatever that looks like for the individual, because each individual's needs are unique.
So let me take it one step further. What I'm hearing from listening to the two of you is that you're creating an environment of crystal clarity. So when you have clarity, you now have the ability to move to the next step of what are the action steps that you're going to take.
For me, we were able to set clear goals. When Charles said, to mindset, and you have to have goals, and so it's so helpful to allocate tasks and also use our resources more effectively.
Okay. Charles, let's circle back. And how would you take all of this and add over what period of time does it usually take? What's the process of ensuring that the entire organization is all on the same page as you kind of walk them through this? And then what's the end point where you feel as though you've effectively delivered what they needed?
Yeah, so timing is something that's unique to each organization. because it depends on the size of the organization, depends on the size of the team that's involved, what the objectives are, what the goals are. So all of that becomes subjective to the organization. However, in providing the the guidance, then I would say if they don't have a clear mission and vision statement, we can usually get there within 30 to 60 days. And you say, well, it seems like a long time. Well, you'll come up with the initial mission and vision pretty quick. It's the refining that takes time, because as you refine, you understand, who you're serving, clients, customers, donors. Then those clients, customers, and donors, they also need to understand that mission and vision that you have. And what may be clear to you as an owner, as a founder, as the executive over the organization, what may be clear to you or your leadership team may not be clear externally. So you have to make sure that it's not only clear internally, but also clear externally. And so as you go through that process, we can usually get there within 30 to 60 days with some very strategic guidance. And then in the long run, it may take 6 months to have a fully vetted strategic plan. And so it doesn't happen overnight. I've seen strategic planning in organizations take as much as 12 months in large enterprise organizations. And they start out in one place and it just takes forever. And a lot of that has to do with just being disjointed in what the delivery and what the objectives, what the goals are. So we just make sure that everything is jointed, tied together, to ensure that we can accelerate the process of creating a strategic plan.
How often do you come back and revisit it?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
How often do you come back and revisit? So for example, you said larger organizations, it can take up to a year. Yep. But is this process also one that can change? In other words, once the mission and vision is set, is it set, or will potentially the environment have some impact on it, so it requires revisiting? Or are you pretty much okay? Once you got it done, you're done?
No, you're never done. So, and the way I like to look at it, it becomes a living process, right? So even in an enterprise, large enterprise, where it may take 12 months, you're generally not executing everything that's in that strategic plan. So it doesn't mean that you can't start executing, but it also means that you're not executing everything. And for the smaller organization, you possibly are executing everything, but there may be, as you generate your plan, you may decide to postpone parts of the actions that are in that plan. And in doing so, the plan continues to live. And as it continues to live, what you have executed on, you may modify, because now you need to take a different approach. So you may tweak in order to have the right approach for the clientele that you serve.
So you bring up a really good point. What are some of the signals? And again, I'm going to come back and look at my years as a CFO, that something needs to be revisited. What would be a couple of the items that you'd be looking at? And by all means, I should also ask Marvy, you can perhaps touch on this as well, is whether or not that's in something you've already experienced. But what guidance would you be providing, Charles?
Well, I think number one is that, are you getting the results? And are you seeing the results in a timely fashion? So as you put your metrics together, that will go along with your strategic plan, are you actually reaching the goals and objectives within that timeline? or are you meeting the milestones? And if you're not, then it has to be, you have to go back and re-evaluate, readjust, so that the strategic plan then becomes viable and you're getting the results that you're looking for. And let me say this. So you may say, I say strategic plan, but it's really the components of that strategic plan, because you'll end up with multiple components, items that you're taking action on. And with each one of those, you need to track it. You need to understand if it's achieving what it needs to achieve. And if not, you have to make the appropriate adjustments. And, there are times when that adjustment may mean that that is not an approach you need to take at all. You need to basically dump that particular approach and to some extent start over. And so, that comes into play as well.
Marvy, how does that resonate with you?
He's right on. For us, we have probably 4 or 5 programs going on every year. And when we discuss each program, he'll say, Charles would advise me on things on how to approach each program. And in reality, us as a nonprofit, clients' needs change, donations change all the time. And so we've had to adjust some of our strategic planning, for example, in our food pantry. Sometimes, when we partner with the food bank, sometimes the food bank just doesn't have the supply that we need. So we've had to revamp our hours, we've revamped our web pages, and sometimes we just have to, with fundraising, that's not working. So let's just not go that route because it just doesn't work for us. So then I'll reach out to Charles and say, hey, this avenue is not working for us. Then he'll give us another suggestion on how to approach that particular event.
Yeah, and I think the other item here is there's an underlying assumption listening to the two of you that the other objective that we've talked in past months, Charles, of efficient processes that have been in place, you're making the assumption that that's done so that it's easy to make the decision that a pivot is required. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because now you're kind of tying in the operational efficiencies that are needed. That because if your processes, your procedures, et cetera, if they're not tight and not on point, then you probably never will achieve what you have planned. So yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. I think that's an important one to be able to identify, because certainly if that's not in place first, the process is muddied because you're not sure, right, whether the problem is internal or is it in fact environmental.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's important to identify that. And it's important to have that foundation in place, but to identify, what are those factors that are keeping you from being a company, an organization, from being efficient as possible? Because without efficiency, then you're probably going to have what I would call waste, right? So time that's wasted. And then that also creates an issue with cost of how you deliver. And then, if there's an issue with cost, issue with the efficiencies, then you also have probably a problem with the quality of output or what's being delivered. So, all of those things become part of the operational efficiency quotient, if you will, and understanding, how do you get greater success? How do you have greater competency? And how do you optimize your resources effectively as possible?
So when we're talking about the financial side, and there's two sides to the equation, revenue and expense. And my experience as a CFO has been people are always most inclined to want to cut expenses, and they struggle to appropriately value their service so that they can boost revenue. Where does that fit into your strategic planning process, that financial piece that would also require some tweaking and directing?
Yeah, so that gets into the thing that I think most, at least for small businesses, that founders and the business owner, the executive team, this for most it's the thing that's not fun to do, and that's the market analysis. And market analysis comes into play because you have to understand, what competitors are offering. You have to understand how what you offer compares to what competitors offer, and that then will determine what your pricing model should be. And my take is that a business should not be afraid to price their product based on the value they're offering, and don't compete with other companies, organizations based on pricing. Because if you're competing on pricing and the only thing you're doing is just continuing to reduce your price to be competitive with your competitors, that's a race to the bottom. You're going nowhere fast, and as well as you're not basically emphasizing or demonstrating the value that you're offering to your client, because you're basically telling your client, your customer, your donor that it's all based on price versus value. And pricing is just a terrible way to compete.
Okay, now let's crosswalk that over to nonprofit. Because frequently, especially for organizations such as Marvy's, that whole thing of pricing value can be quite the challenge. So what did you guys do?
Charles.
Well, I'll start here. Is that understanding that donations are critical, and the way that you show up, your messaging, your again the value, the mission, the vision, all of that comes into play, because for a donor is looking to contribute to something that they can tie their passion to. Someone who's buying as a customer or a client, they are also looking to spend their money with something that they can tie their passion to, their needs to, their wants to. And so the same thing is true with the nonprofit. And with the nonprofit, yeah, you want the larger donations, but you also understand that with a nonprofit, those donations, the smaller donations, actually become the backbone of the organization, because the smaller donations are the ones that you're going to get more of those than the larger ones. The larger ones become strategic, but the smaller ones are the ones that help you continue to operate your organization from day to day. But at the same time, you can't be afraid to ask for more. And asking for more comes in different ways. So asking for more, you ask directly. You ask through your newsletters. You ask through email updates. You ask through, so all these various different ways you're always emphasizing a need for donations, and you do it in a very professional way. You're not begging, but you always want to make sure that there's awareness that the organization functions through the process of donations and volunteers.
Let me get really crude here for a second. Again, as a CFO as well as a past HR person, one of the things that I quickly recognized was the reality of how we deliver value. So we're attracting clients who value us and the staff who work for us. And I differentiate that from what I call the client from hell, who wants everything, but they don't value what's being delivered, and it eats up resources that otherwise could have been spent on growing with clients that value what's being articulated, and you don't settle. Am I on the right track?
You're on the right track, but I will let Marvy answer that question.
Well, no, I hadn't gone to Marvy yet. I just wanted me, you're presenting the concept.
No, you're on the right track, but right. I think some real life examples maybe.
So I can think of cases in which as a senior executive, in which I recommended to my boss to not engage with a client because they were going to absorb or use more resources than we could possibly charge, and potentially they'd be litigious, which unfortunately I was right.
So what I call that is that there's a level of risk management that's involved, because you have to understand the risk of whoever you work with. But also there's governance that needs to be in place, right? So that governance basically gives you guardrails, governance, compliance as well, because you have your internal compliance, your rules that you put in place. But that governance gives you guardrails as to who you will and will not work with. And then there's also a financial component, because now you have a budget in place, or should have a budget in place, as to how you apply your budget toward acquiring or helping your clients, your customers, your donors. So, but I'll leave it at a high level there, and Marvy probably has some examples, not using names or anything, but some examples of how that works.
Well, I'll have a specific question for her in one moment, but I want to make one more point to what you're saying.
Okay.
And that's this: in this era in which we're having a difficult time holding on to employee retention, another strategy is clarity in communicating how employees are valued and what's accepted and not accepted, and how to go about managing it so that the employee understands that they're valued.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's another strong point. But
I agree with you. That's absolutely a strong point. And that goes really back to those fundamentals that I mentioned earlier, because whether you're hiring or whether you are setting objectives for your employees, the unique value proposition, the vision, the mission of the company, it all comes into play, because if everyone can be passionate about what the company is offering, what the company is about, what the organization is doing, if everyone can be passionate about that and understand their role, then it helps with that retention. Certainly there's a money component and all of that, salary, but it also helps when I can feel as though I belong and I am contributing to the company's goals.
Yep. And that is being valued. So
That's being valued.
and is being valued. So Marvy, for you, you mentioned this earlier, and so let's tie it back to nonprofit and your company specifically. Donors want to know that their dollars are stretching far. So in the same respect, for a nonprofit, we're listening to Charles. That means you have to articulate and being able to demonstrate that even the kinds of clients that you're helping, you're bringing on clients that are going to make the most use of the donations that you've been able to get so you can continue to keep your donors excited. Is that right?
Absolutely. So our nonprofit, we don't receive grants. We are completely donor dependent. And one of our processes that Charles has helped me implement is the vetting process. We've had, although we want to help everyone, we just can't, because not everyone wants the help that we offer. We require our clients to want to work rather than depend on government assistance. We require them to be actively looking for employment. And if they don't have any resource, we provide them with recruiters that who volunteer for us, so to speak, and we refer them to recruiters. And then we say, okay, well, if they don't get in contact with you, then we need to go back to that client and ask them, you know, what are you doing to find employment? So I like the term Charles, risk management, right? For us, we do come across entitlement. And when we address requirements of organizations, such as, you know, you must have transportation, you must have daycare, and we provide them resources to be able to obtain these requirements. We work with HMR, we work with social workers. So it is something that is impossible to obtain. Transportation might be a little bit more challenging, but we don't come across that too often. But employment, we have resources upon resources, and when we don't see them taking advantage of the resource, then we need to examine and say, you know, this is not something, this is not in our mission, because our mission is not just to hand out donations. It's more giving a hand up than a handout. And so in our vetting process, numerous questions, if they're agreeable to that, we assign a life coach, and the life coach will then do an assessment as to how motivated they are to move past where they are to the next step. If they're doing great, fine, we will continue to give them resources and help them financially if needs be. But if they're hell bent on just receiving freebies and just getting something for nothing, then we have to refer them to somewhere else, because we value our donors, we value their resources, and we don't want to be known as just an organization that we don't have a financial cushion as a nonprofit. We don't have emergency funds. And so we have to mitigate, we have to examine where each and every dollar going to. And it has to be something that we can measure. If we're just handing money here and there, that's not using our donors or our resources. So we have a good vetting process, and Charles has developed a vetting process, and it's crucial to how we serve our clients.
thank you for the explanation. And I'm sure this in turn enables you to attract more donors who then in turn want to be a partner with you in what you're doing in the Fort Worth area.
That's our hope.
Yep, that's the goal here. Well, we're about running out of time. I'm going to turn it over to Charles. And Charles, is there one more message or do you want to summarize up for us before we kind of close out this session today?
Yeah, I think everything we've talked about here is about sustainability. You mentioned this at the very beginning, and sustainability is highly important regardless of what the type of organization. Again, whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, virtual family office, you want to be everything you do should be sustainable. And, in the case of what Marvy was just talking about, if there are no guardrails and everyone is basically given a handout, then that doesn't use the donors' donated funds in the proper way, and would have the reverse effect. You start losing donors versus gaining donors, and therefore not sustainable. So you want to make sure everything you have in place creates an air of sustainability, and that then attracts more of the type of clientele that you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think the two of you have done a great job today in being able to just create this clarity of applicability on creating sustainable growth in organizations, regardless of their size or their structure. So I really want to thank you for doing that so well today. Charles, if people want to follow up with you between the now and the next time we're together, which again, we're looking at doing this live, is how do they do that? How do they get a hold of you?
I think the best way is actually to go to this other side here. The best way is actually contact me, through my website, and that is, it has a link on there to schedule a meeting with me. That is the simplest thing to do at www.xelantt.com, and that's the simplest way. And so it gets you directly to me, and I can then, we can collaborate on, how we might be able to help.
And the type of customer that you're looking for, you have no size limitations, do you?
I don't necessarily have size limitations. We do look at some guardrails in terms of, so nonprofits we treat a little different, but in general we're looking at companies that are 25 employees or more, and that puts them within a certain revenue range generally. We do work with some companies that are smaller, so it just kind of depends on where they are from a revenue generation standpoint and if it's a fit for us. So we do some very strenuous vetting to ensure that we're working with the right companies, that we're a good fit for them and they are a good fit for us as well.
Okay, so you basically say, don't self-select yourself out, call and talk to you.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, simple terms. And Marvy, for those individuals in the Fort Worth area, what would you like them to know, or in Texas generally, or anyone listening to this, as far as people getting a hold of you at Chat and Shoot?
We can reach us through our website. It's chatnhew.org, and all our information is on our website, including our forms. If you know anyone going through going through some domestic issues, give us a call, and we'd be happy to help them.
All right, very good. And on my part, go on. Charles, you're going to say something?
Yeah, so I do have a question for Marvy. Obviously, you're working with, your clients are local, in the Fort Worth area. But what about donors? Where the donors have to be from Fort Worth, or can they be from anywhere?
Absolutely not. They can be from anyone. We actually have some clients in the Georgia area, in California, and in Chicago. So, and we do that pretty much online, life coaching, therapy, and some food assistance. Walmart delivers anywhere. So our donors can be, you never know what someone's going through anywhere in this part of the US. So
Okay. Thank you for the additional clarification. And on my part, again, if you're interested in some innovative cash management strategies, enabling you to kind of use bank products to dramatically pay less interest without changing your spending, as well as simple strategies. I have a simple saying: small changes bring big results, and just incremental change will dramatically increase both your revenues as well as reducing expenses. And again, regardless of company size. So again, I'm at cashmapapp.com. I want to invite all of our listeners to join us again this time next month. And we'll look forward to getting your input, your questions, and continuing this dialogue. So thanks again from Money Talk Viewpoint for taking the time to spend with us this morning in building sustainable organizational growth, regardless of business size. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Marvy.
thanks, Charles.